You know, we all think the Bible story kicks off with that famous line, "in the beginning." But what if that wasn't the real beginning? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild theory that suggests an entire lost world, a massive cosmic war, and a planet-shattering judgment all happened before the story we think we know even gets started. This is the gap theory, and it basically argues that the story we read in Genesis is actually chapter 2.
And really, the whole mystery boils down to this one question. It seems so simple, right? But the space between these two opening lines of Scripture, well, that's where proponents of this theory believe a hidden epic is buried. It's a gap that, if it's real, could change how you see everything that comes after.
Okay, so let's start with verse 1. It sounds perfect, right? Orderly, complete. God creates a perfect universe. It's clean, it's simple. But hang on, because what comes next is, well, it's a huge and jarring shift.
And just like that, boom, we're looking at total chaos. The world is described as formless and empty, a drowning, dark wasteland. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark, right? And that begs a huge question. Why would a God of perfect order create a world that's immediately a formless, chaotic mess? And it's that contradiction that cracks the door open for a pretty radical idea. So this gets us to the core idea we're going to unpack today. That space between a perfect creation and a chaotic world isn't just a transition, it's a gap. And it might just be a gap hiding the story of an entire world that existed long before Adam ever did.
So let's put an official definition on it. The gap theory basically says that an unrecorded amount of time, we're talking maybe millions of years, who knows, passed between these two verses. And during that time, a completely different world, a pre-Adamic world, not only existed, but was catastrophically destroyed, leaving the earth in that wrecked state we find it in verse 2.
You know, a huge piece of this argument actually comes down to a single word in the original Hebrew. The word we usually translate as was, as in the earth was formless, can also mean became. And that one little change, it changes everything. It suggests the earth wasn't created as a chaotic mess, it became one after something terrible happened. And this idea isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's supported by other parts of Scripture. The prophet Isaiah says very clearly that God did not create the earth in vain. And guess what? That's the exact same Hebrew word for formless. He created it to be lived in. So the logic is, right, if the original creation was perfect and made for life, then something must have happened to wreck it.
Okay, so if there was a world, who was in it? Or what was in it?
Well, the theory points to a being of almost unimaginable power and beauty who ruled over this pristine pre-Adamic creation.
Well, the book of Ezekiel gives us this absolutely incredible picture. And this isn't the Garden of Eden we know. This is a heavenly Eden, the mountain of God. The being who walked here was Lucifer, the morning star. I mean, he's described as the seal of perfection itself, flawless in wisdom and beauty, and holding a position of supreme authority. This guy, according to the theory, was the ruler of the first earth.
But in all that perfection, something went wrong. Something cracked. One single corrupting thought of pride took root, and it led to the very first rebellion in the history of the universe, and the actual birth of sin itself.
The prophet Isaiah actually gives us a peek into his inner monologue during this fall. And just listen to the escalation here. 5 times he declares, "I will." It's this defiant declaration of self-worship. It starts with just wanting to climb higher, but it ends with the ultimate cosmic treason, the creature wanting to replace the creator.
And get this, his argument, his deception, was so powerful and so convincing, he didn't go it alone. He talked a full 1/3 of the angels, we're talking millions of powerful celestial beings, into joining him in his attempted coup of heaven.
Well, what happened next was inevitable. All-out war. A cosmic civil war breaks out, with the Archangel Michael leading the good guys against Lucifer, who's now called the Dragon. And how perfect is this? Michael's name in Hebrew means, "who is like God." It was the battle cry and the perfect comeback to Lucifer's pride. Needless to say, the rebels lost. So yeah, the rebellion failed. But the fallout? It was cosmic. Lucifer's fall from grace didn't just get him kicked out of heaven. It brought down a catastrophic judgment on the very world he was supposed to be ruling.
Even Jesus talks about this moment, describing it as this sudden, violent expulsion. Satan, the former morning star, is hurled down to the earth like lightning. And according to the gap theory, it's this cataclysmic event, this divine judgment,
that shatters the original creation and plunges the world into that dark, watery chaos we read about in Genesis 1, verse 2.
Okay, now this might be the most jaw-dropping piece of evidence that proponents of this theory use. The prophet Jeremiah has this vision of a desolate earth. And look at the words he uses, the exact same Hebrew as Genesis, formless and empty. He sees a world with absolutely no life, but with one really shocking exception.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. Jeremiah sees ruined cities. Cities. But he makes it super clear there are no people. So, who built those cities? For advocates of the gap theory, this is a smoking gun, a clear vision of the pre-Adamic world after its judgment. A world that had civilization, that was wiped out long before Adam was ever created.
But the story doesn't end there. In all that rubble and darkness, out of the chaos comes a brand new beginning, a story of renewal that we read in the very next verses of Genesis.
And a verse from the Psalms becomes really key here. The idea is that the 6 days of Genesis, they aren't about creation from scratch. They're about renewal. The Spirit of God, hovering over those dark waters, is starting the massive job of restoring a shattered planet.
So if you look at the 6 days through that lens, it's a completely different story. It's a restoration project. On day 1, God doesn't create light for the first time. He says, "Let there be light," restoring it. On day 4, he doesn't create the sun and moon. He makes them visible again through a cleared atmosphere. It's a step-by-step reclamation of a world that was absolutely ruined.
And once the world is renewed, God kicks off his new plan. Humanity is created in his image, a brand new creation for a renewed earth. And we're given the original job, to take dominion, the very same dominion that the fallen morning star had so spectacularly corrupted and lost. So, that's the question we'll leave you with. Is it possible? Could an entire lost world, a war in heaven, and a cataclysmic flood of judgment all be hiding in the silence between two verses? The gap theory suggests that maybe the story of humanity isn't just about creation, but about reclamation, a second chance on a world that has already seen a war between gods.